So welcome everybody. And just to go over, the meeting will be held in person and will be streamed on the YouTube. And from a public participation perspective, it is requested that members of public wishing to address the commission submit a speaker card. And Anya is sitting there. You guys can hand over the speaker card there. And when public comment is open on an agenda item, individual may speak up once per agenda item. And for the people in person, we submit the speaker card at the meeting. When your name is called, please provide comment at the podium. With that, we call the meeting to the order, and we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Anya, you can help me with the roll call.
Commissioner Alfaro.
Present.
Brown.
Present.
Deckard.
Present.
Hall.
Here.
Vickers.
Here.
And Chair Imadi.
Yes, here.
Thank you.
And any agenda amendments? And I take it as no. And at this time, meeting is open to the public, and I don't see anybody here. So we move on to the next item, which is Parks and Recreation Commission meeting minutes we need to adopt. And anybody has any comments or feedback on the meeting minutes?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the September 12th meeting.
I second it.
I'll take a second on that.
We take a roll call, Ani, on that?
Yes, please. Commissioner Alfaro.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Deckard.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Vickers.
Yes.
Chair Imadi.
Yes.
Thank you.
And matters for the commission for tonight. We start off with a review and draft urban forest master plan, CIP number 22773, and staff will provide them the report before we have the comments.
All right, I'm ready. Chair Mahdi, thank you very much. Congrats on your first day here. You're doing great.
Thank you.
As staff to present the urban forest master plan, I have all the main people here. So I'm Matt Gruber, the city's landscape architect, as you know, and I'll be presenting along with Kevin Cullinan. He's our consultant with Dudek. Also to answer questions if any come up, we have Sarah Hosserman and we have Giacomo De Monte. So just to kick this off, I'm going to be giving the first part of the presentation, and Kevin's going to give the second part of the presentation, and I ask you to hold any questions or comments you might have until the end, and then we could revisit the slides. Tonight, we'll be presenting the draft Urban Forest Master Plan. We've been working on this plan for almost 2 years now. Then we'll be going over the next steps and the recommendations for you tonight, and we'll be really here to answer any questions and hear any comments, which is really the main purpose of the meeting tonight. Now, you might be wondering, what is Urban Forest Master Plan? And if you've read the document already, it's a giant document, so you definitely already know from that big document. But just in general terms, it's kind of a document, it's a guiding document for two main things. It's to provide a strategic roadmap for the city to manage our urban forests and keep our tree canopy healthy. And also, it's a shared vision for the community to ensure the long-term benefits to the community from our urban forest. And why does the city need a UFMP? There's a lot of recent events that happen that really drive home the need for the Urban Forest Master Plan. But when we started on this, we said we need this because we need to align with CAP 2.0. We need to align with the strategic plan, the Pleasanton 1 strategic plan. We need to really provide a current management program for the city's urban forest, and we needed to create measurable goals and strategies to manage the forest for the next 25 years, along with updating our tree preservation ordinance, which we've completed. The Urban Forest Master Plan consists of three main documents. Part one is the Urban Forest Master Plan, and that's really the heart of the document. It summarizes everything within the three documents, and it really is the management plan for the urban forest. Part two is the technical assessments, so it's like the detailed analysis of the management plan. So it talks about budget and that sort of thing, along with a lot of other things like best management practices and whatnot. Then the third part, which the first two are based on, are the appendices. There's a frequently asked questions. There's a section, a chapter on wildfire planning for the wildland-urban interface area, along with species lists and a bunch of other documents that we use as references. And part one is for everybody. Part two is directed really for staff, and part three is for the public and staff alike. And when we started working on this, we had a vision, which was to have an urban forest that is well managed and a vital resource providing social, economic, and environmental benefits which contribute to the community's quality of life, value, character, and beauty. And that's really the driving force behind the master plan.
All right. And then to go along with the vision, we have a series of guiding principles, and those you can think of as themes for the UFMP, which reflect both the vision and also help to direct the goals that are within the UFMP. And so that includes a resilient community, a community invested in preserving and growing the urban forest, city trees that are funded and managed to maximize the benefits for the public, and integrating trees from the start. And we created these guiding principles with a urban forest working group that was informed by the community. And then Matt mentioned it previously, but we wanted to make sure that this UFMP aligns with existing city planning documents, including the strategic plan. And so there are many recommendations for community engagement and education, as those are going to be key parts in meeting the goals of the Urban Forest Master Plan. And then there are 5 key findings that we wanted to summarize here in the UFMP. The first of which is that canopy cover has increased from 18.5% in 2012 to 25.3% in 2022. And there are several reasons why this might be the case of an actual increase. So first, we have that there's younger trees in the existing tree inventory that are maturing into larger, bigger trees. We had kind of better enforcement, I think, of the ordinance, and we have the Green Building Code, which results in better protection of existing trees, as well as having replacement trees as mitigation for trees that are removed from other projects. And then probably one of the biggest factors is that the 2 resolutions from 2012 and the 2022 aerial imagery were slightly different, with the 2022 aerial imagery being a higher resolution, and so it likely picked up more detail and more canopy because of it. So the next key finding is that the vast majority of trees in Pleasanton are actually on private property. So that makes up 70% of the overall forest canopy. And so, as we mentioned before, engaging the private community is going to be really important, and providing them resources and education in order to meet the future urban forestry goals. The third key finding is about the importance of the city increasing its species diversity with climate adapted trees for a more resilient urban forest. So as part of this UFMP effort, we did a complete inventory of all public managed trees. That's a little over 25,000 trees. And so in the table here, we have the top 10 most common species, and there's a general sustainability goal to not have any one species represent more than 10% of the inventory. In the city's case, we only have one species that's over 10%, which is London plane. And so, we want to encourage the city to keep diversifying their inventory so that it's more resilient, to future changes in climate and pests and diseases as well. The fourth key finding is about the need for additional funding in order to meet the future urban forestry goals. And we'll touch on the main canopy cover goal for the city in a future slide here, but essentially the city is currently spending around $1.2 million annually for urban forest management. That's represented as the lighter green line on the graph to the right there. And we've projected that an additional $20.5 million is potentially needed over the next 25 years to achieve the future urban forest canopy goals and to maintain the current urban forestry services. And that's represented by the green line there. And so I do want to explain this, that the reason for the additional costs in the projected, goal for meeting the urban forestry goal is due to a number of things, but one of them is a huge cost from establishment care. So currently the city is with new trees that they plant are really only giving 1 year or one season of maintenance and watering and things like that. And we're recommending that they increase that to 3 years. So that's a big cost with the more trees that need to be watered. And there's a number of other factors as well. But what should be, it's one other thing that I should mention is that there's only a limited number of viable vacant tree sites in kind of these neighborhoods that I'll talk about a little bit later that we want to target for increasing canopy cover. And so that would mean that the city would actually have to potentially break concrete or asphalt in order to create new tree sites to get more trees into these neighborhoods, which is a large cost as well. But there's definitely many opportunities for the city to save costs by, partnering potentially with schools, maybe exploring a front yard tree program, seeing if there's additional space in parks to plant trees, and then again, maybe thinking about if a 3-year establishment care period is too much, maybe trying a 2-year period instead, and that will save significant costs as well. And then the last key finding is the need for a dedicated urban forestry team. So after talking with staff, we found that the management of the city's trees currently is just carried out by the landscape architecture office, so these two folks, and then the parks division. And neither of those departments have roles that are solely focused on trees. And so staff must balance competing priorities. And so having a dedicated urban forestry team that manages the public and private trees will help to balance those existing workloads. And also improve the likelihood of the successful implementation of the UFMP recommended actions. And so to guide staff, we have an implementation plan that's broken into 3 categories of actions, which include the short-term high priority actions, things that should be completed in the first to 5th years of the project after the plan is complete. And to go along with those, we also created a monitoring plan, which has methods of measurement, essentially, right, for keeping track of the different recommended actions and the city's progress on implementing those actions. And those are broken into the same categories of short-term, medium-term, and long-term. There's also another monitoring metric that can be used for more general urban forest sustainability indicators, which is this American Forest website and this Vibrant Cities Lab. So it's just another way, another metric for the city to track their progress on a sustainable urban forest. And as Matt mentioned before, so part 2, we just wanted to highlight a little bit of some of the key findings there. So the technical assessment, again, is more meant for city staff. It gets really into the details of management, the status of the urban forest, canopy cover and equity, analysis of current plans, policies, and ordinances, and then community engagement. So looking at the detailed budget a little bit more closely here, as I mentioned before, the city spends about $1.2 million on urban forest management, and that's broken up into these various categories here. You can see a large portion is on tree pruning, which is mostly contracted work. And then we also have metrics or kind of services that the city provides on the right there. So you can see a little over 3,400 trees are pruned each year. That's, on a 5-year pruning cycle, which is generally what we recommend. 226 trees are removed each year, but only 151 trees are planted. So there's a little bit of a deficit there. And then 254 trees are watered. And then this is looking at a age composition and condition of those existing, 25,000 plus public trees that we inventoried, and just looking at the condition of those trees categorized by age. And you can see that most of those are in the fair condition, which means they're doing okay, but there's still, some area for improvement there. But overall, the canopy or the inventory is doing well. And then On the right, we have just the makeup of the inventory by age. So you can see the majority of the trees are kind of in that immature to young category, meaning that the city should prioritize protecting these existing trees, right, to make sure that they can grow into mature canopy. And then we also wanted to highlight the environmental and economic benefits of the city's public trees, which, you know, if you took the structural value of replacing the whole public tree inventory, that's $99 million, right, which is quite a bit. There's benefits from trees, obviously, from shade and potentially, you know, saving on electricity if they're, you know, planted on a correct side of the house. And then also, one of the most important things that we found, you know, is that trees increase property values. With generally, you know, having trees in neighborhoods, mature trees in neighborhoods is going to have the biggest increase in property values. Okay, so now this is kind of diving into the goal that we have for canopy cover for the city. So currently the city has a 25% canopy cover, and that's actually quite good for a city that's in a grassland, mostly grassland habitat. Usually 20% is kind of the goal that American Forest has set for grassland cities. And because of that, the project team decided to focus more on an equity standpoint from the canopy cover goal. And so we really wanted to focus in on the neighborhoods, which you can see on the map to the left there. So the neighborhoods in red and orange are the ones that have below 25% canopy cover. And so those are the neighborhoods that we really wanted to focus the resources in. And to pair with that, we also have another analysis from American Forest, which is this average tree equity score, which takes into account a number of factors, including canopy cover, pollution, unemployment, and socioeconomic status. So a lot of different factors there. And the scores kind of range from maybe the mid 50s in orange there to all the way up to 100, with Pleasanton's average score being about 81. And you can kind of see that the orange areas, right, which are the highest priorities to treat on the map to the right, do match up mostly with the areas that we've focused on in the left map there. And then we also wanted to highlight the canopy cover specifically in parks. So the range of canopy cover is from 10.4%, which is in Bernal Community Park, all the way up to 68.5% in Cottinger Community Park. And then if you look at all the 46 parks together, that is 41.9% canopy. But then if you're just looking purely at, you know, park acreage versus canopy acreage, it comes out to be 26.2% canopy for parkland and open space. Okay, and then the last part of the UFMP is the appendices, which you can see there's quite a few here. We have a number of great resources for both residents and city staff, and I'm going to highlight a few of them here. So the first one is the wildfire section, which we had our wildfire planner help out with, and you know, coordinated with CAL FIRE staff and other local fire department staff. So we found, you know, that there's increased wildfire risk along the west and south sides of the city, which you can see in red and kind of darker orange on the map to the right there. There's also, you know, state and local regulations which have specific tree management requirements in higher fire risk areas, which include trimming for additional clearance from buildings and utilities, and then also prompt removal of dead trees. And the cost to comply with these regulations can be considerable, especially if, you know, full tree removal is involved. But the city has secured a $1 million grant for fuel load reduction work, and also in the most recent ordinance update, we've tried to make it easier for folks to remove trees if they're in a high fire risk area as well. And then we have our recommended tree species list. So I talked about that before, you know, climate adapted species, as well as just species that city staff have observed have been doing well already in the city. And so we have a whole list there, as well as kind of an intro section for residents on how to pick tree species. And so you can see it has a number of attributes that people can find information about: water use, planting area, you know, how big the trees get, and then pest and disease vulnerability as well. And then one of my favorite sections is this really nice illustrated best practices management and standards, which include illustrated guidelines for tree spacing, planting and establishment, tree pruning, both for young and mature trees, tree protection, and more. So lots of good resources there. And then lastly, we have a section on infrastructure conflicts and providing solutions and protocols for dealing with that. And so we have some pathways, and then we have some kind of descriptions and benefits and considerations for thinking about solutions besides just removing a tree if it's, say, uplifting a sidewalk. And I will pass it over to Matt.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so here we are tonight giving you this presentation. And as we're doing with all the city's assets, we're looking at the urban forest master plan to figure out a way to sustainably manage what we have. And that's really one of the key points of the urban forest master plan. And we're going to receive feedback from you. We've already gone to the Energy and Environment Commission too. And we're going to take the input we receive and the agenda report that you've seen and present it to City Council on March 18th. In April, we'll be incorporating the council and commission and staff and community input into the final master plan and presenting that master plan for approval and adoption by City Council on May 20th. And with that, that's the end of our presentation. So we'd like to open up for any questions or comments from the commission.
Thank you, Matt and the staff. So we'll kind of go around table and take the comments, and just a reminder, we are not kind of making any motion or anything. We are just taking the staff presentation and provide the staff with the comments. So Mike, you want to start with you?
As far as questions, I have a question on this key findings, item 5, a need for a team dedicated. You guys have an idea of how many people you're looking at a team, and I'm assuming these are full-time positions, and what the cost would be annually on that?
Yeah, so this is something that we're currently analyzing, and we've just been talking about that between the different divisions. And let's see, but where did that one go? This one. But it would basically be not so much that we'd be adding a lot more staff, but maybe adding a smaller amount and shuffling the existing staff so that we have one person that's actually managing the whole thing, from the city's tree preservation ordinance like Sarah and I do, to maintenance of the parks trees and the street median trees, and working with streets to deal with sidewalk conflicts and that sort of thing, so that we have one person that kind of oversees the whole process. And then we'd have like a lead worker that would be in charge of managing the actual teams, and we'd probably be focusing some more of our staff instead of WCA, our tree contractor, on doing some of the smaller tree pruning in like our parks and whatnot. And Giacomo might have something to add to that too. So just kind of looking at it, the whole team would be maybe 4 or 5 people, but it'd partially just be a reshuffle of existing staff.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Matt pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, to have a viable tree crew, you'd probably need to do, pruning in parks, handle emergencies, decrease contract services. You're looking at least 3 people doing the work, and at least an urban forest manager or urban forest supervisor whose sole job is to hopefully manage urban forest, work closer with the community, work closer with any community groups that might evolve out of this, look for new planting locations, educate people. So at least 4 to 5 people would be ideal. And like Matt said, it could be a reshuffle of current park staff. I mean, obviously there's lots of budget discussions going on, so it's a little hard to know where all the chips will fall at this point.
Yeah, but, that was really pushing the question. One other thing really quick is I see we have a grant for $1 million for brush clearing and so forth. Is that a federal or a state? Where's that grant from?
So we are in luck. That is a California grant and not a federal grant. So it's a CAL FIRE grant. We I should say Sarah took the
It
lead.
actually does get funded by the federal government ultimately. So, but that funding has already been locked in, so we won't be cut.
No, but my point
As
is,
we understand.
Yeah, after this period is gone through, we have to look, at how this $1 million grant is good. I mean, what's your vision on how long that money will cut? Is it 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons? How does that work?
Go ahead.
It's a 5-year plan.
So it's that $1 million over 5 years.
Yeah.
And okay.
And,
then
we're working on it right now. It starts with the environmental review process, which we're in the middle of, and then it'll move towards implementing the recommendations of that fuel management project and the environmental documents.
good. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, Commissioner Stuck, your feedback?
Just as background, as some of you were, I was on the Urban Forest Master Plan Subcommittee along with 2 city council members, and we helped staff put together a lot of the material for this plan. But one question came up at our last meeting, Matt. I came up with the guess that with the new slightly relaxed heritage tree regulations, we might see in the next 5 years a reduction in our tree inventory. But then we both discussed, and I thought it was possible that after 5 years, we would actually see that plateau, and then potentially the inventory would grow. Do you want to maybe give some background to how we came up with those numbers, or that thought basis?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I should have mentioned this before. We did just update the tree preservation ordinance. We had a subcommittee that was critical to updating the ordinance. We talked about a lot of different things, and really, as Kevin mentioned, the majority of the urban forest is private, and that's where the biggest impacts are going to be. And so the tree preservation ordinance is a huge tool to use to keep the health of our urban forest, but also it's necessary that we need to respond to the community's needs. So we definitely updated the tree preservation ordinance to provide more flexibility for tree removal, but we also made other changes to try and balance that out considering the long-term health of the forest. So for instance, we made it easier to remove trees that are right next to homes, trees that are in dangerous situations or in the high fire hazard zones. But we also try to put extra protection on trees that are actually native to Pleasanton. So there's extra protection on 10 trees that are actually native to Pleasanton before people came. So we're trying to balance that out. And so we are hoping that the long term is going to be a wash. I think we're already starting to see a lot of palm tree removals because we've removed the height category from a heritage tree, or now the large trees, and we are working on actually I think one of the main messages we received is focus on the succession planting. So tree remove is a tree replace. So that's one of the big things we're doing.
And I just want to add, part of my hopes for the Urban Forest Master Plan is to tangibly show the benefits of trees, and hopefully people may start to plant more trees on their own properties or be more accepting of the public tree in front of their home. I think that's long-term. My hope is that, wow, it really does save money, or it really does increase my property value, and maybe I will plant a tree in my backyard or my front yard.
And that would be the potential of that 5-year realization. Of
Possibly,
maybe
yeah.
initially having people take advantage of their ability now to cut trees down with the palms, and it's,
yeah. So maybe they'll replace that palm tree with a shade tree, something that provides more tangible benefits to them. Yeah.
Just one last question. You mentioned that the city's 23,000 trees. Does that include the private trees as well?
No.
that's
Okay.
just,
So
that's only public
So
trees.
city,
only
we have
city
at least a double that amount of trees in Pleasanton.
Correct, yeah.
Probably. Okay.
And we should add that's only the trees we maintain. So that doesn't include any of the open space trees that we do not maintain. So all of Gus and Bernal Park, basically all the open spaces that it's natural.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but it doesn't include like Hacienda Business Park trees. It doesn't include like trees in the Ironwood development that are privately maintained by that homeowners association. So to the layperson, you may not realize what's, a city maintained tree or a private or HOA maintained tree.
We do have the inventory now publicly available. So if you go to the city's website, anybody can look at the inventory. We just updated the inventory. That migration is happening, so that's not live yet. But our inventory from last year is live on the website, so you could go and see all of the trees that have been captured.
So, for instance, if you're walking somewhere and you're like, I really like that tree, or I really hate that tree, you could now go on the city's website and you could find out what that tree is. So Sarah just made that happen, yesterday? So we're excited about that.
That's good. Just maybe for everybody's interest, as far as the medians that are in front of people have some people's homes. It's always been kind of a gray area. The homeowner is usually responsible for the landscaping of those medians, but the trees in those medians in front of their homes are owned by the city, correct?
Giacomo, this is right up your alley.
Yeah.
In most cases, in most neighborhoods, those trees are part of the city's urban forest inventory. But you can think of it as that's an improvement that the city made, and the city is responsible for maintaining that improvement. But we don't go in and do the landscaping. We don't do any type of upgrades in that area between the sidewalk and the curb.
Right.
So I do get asked quite a bit, why doesn't the city maintain this area? It's not technically my property, and there's a big, you could argue a bunch of ways about that, but the homeowner has the ability to make improvements in that area, but we will retain that area in case, I should say, we reserve the right to make improvements in that area. So one day maybe they want to widen the sidewalk or widen the street or change the curb line. We would have the ability to do that.
But it is correct. The homeowner does not have the right to maintain the tree in that median.
No. Currently, all the tree maintenance would fall under the purview of the Parks Division and their
That's where I
their
think
staff or the contracts.
There's that confusion with a lot of homeowners.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, the need for the dedicated urban forestry team. So currently, there is no public outreach. There is no communication, planned communication between the city and the residents on what they can do with that property, whose property is that, how to maintain the trees or not to maintain the trees. Can you pave all the way up to the trunk of the newly planted trees? So all of those types of conversations and public outreach that aligns with our strategic plan is part of this, would be part of the responsibilities of this new team. It has yet to be formally sort of determined what that all entails, but all of those pain points or that public outreach that we've heard from the community is vision to be part of the responsibilities that this team would be
And you wouldn't
taking.
be looking at any outside members for that team, such as local arborists, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure yet what that, I think the dedicated urban forestry team is considered like a dedicated team within the city, a staff person, but I'm sure there will be working with external arborists. We do now, we consult now with professionals that are, in the field, but not city staff.
Yeah, Kelly. Yeah.
Kelly and others, yes.
Thank you.
So, if someone were to fill that space with concrete, someday we might want to plant a tree there, and we might remove that concrete to plant the tree there. So that would be, we reserve that right to make any improvement in that area. So we haven't gotten to that point yet, but maybe in the future, if we're looking to really boost the canopy in some of these neighborhoods, we might be looking to do that.
Thanks, staff.
And not to muddy the waters, and I know we've been talking about this a long time, and I don't want to prolong it too much more, but it is varied across the city who's responsible for the medians and the parkway strip planting. So now there's a movement to have the HOAs responsible for developments, and they're like for the Township Square over by Safeway, they are responsible for maintaining those trees instead of the city. Once again, it gets back to managing our assets and our expenses.
Thank you. So Commissioner Lisa.
Yes, so I have a couple of questions. So on the budget, on the 1.2 million, and then I saw you said it was going to go up. Is this actually just budgeted within our current budget, like so that each year it's 1.2 and or what, like, or is this actually what is being budgeted? Sorry, I just don't know.
Right. I think, and Kevin, you can jump in if I get stray off the way it was calculated. So every year we have a amount of money that's allocated towards contract services. So out of that bucket, we set aside a certain amount for our tree maintenance contractor, but we also have other contract services money that we could also use to do extra tree work. This could be the big storm comes through, we have to get another company or two in to do help with the cleanup efforts. It could be special projects for tree removals. But then I think part of that dollar value is also city staff time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there are no dedicated tree crew. So every member of the Parks Division at some point is going to be, pruning trees, planting trees, doing tree stake maintenance, watering trees. So that time is also captured in that budget amount. And then we have one park supervisor who spends a good portion of their time, responding to work requests, identifying tree replacement locations, and managing the contract.
Thank you. And then
So it can go up and down. Like 2023 with the big storms, we spent more money that year, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then the next question I had is on the private trees. And so, like, in the plan, are you planning on reaching out to private residents and asking them about their trees? Was that what was in that? Kind of went kind of fast. I don't know what slide that was.
We can tag team it.
Yeah, so definitely, our goal really is to get more community involvement. I mean, Pleasanton prides itself on it, like our community involvement, and we really want to tap into that with the urban forest, and we want to give residents an opportunity to contribute. So like I remember when I was just a little like 7-year-old kid, my second grade teacher gave me a tree, and my parents planted it, and now it's a giant tree and their neighbors hate it. But it's a very nice tree, and it's doing great, and my mom loves it. And we are looking to do programs like that where we would do tree giveaway programs. And the great thing about these tree giveaway programs is we have a thing called the Urban Forestry Fund, and it's funded through private development impact fees. So we would be utilizing the developer funds to fund programs for the community. And that would not only be these tree giveaways that we'd have at like Earth Day or Arbor Day or those sorts of events, but also we would be planting trees ourselves using some of that money.
I can kind of give a somewhat of a real world example. So I received a call from the neighborhood, someone that lived in the neighborhood right around Val Vista. Maybe it was near Payne and Denker, that neighborhood in there. And that neighborhood in particular does not have that strip of land between the sidewalk and the gutter. It's just gutter, sidewalk, front yard. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, why aren't there any trees in this neighborhood? And that's part of the reason there's no public space to put them in. But that would be a good neighborhood to do outreach in and say, hey, we're giving away trees. You have a front yard that's just maybe just grass or other landscaping, and try to maybe make a change in that neighborhood through one of these programs.
Cool. And if we need to remove the tree in the on my property, do you guys have recommendations on trees that should get planted in their place if there's a tree that died or whatnot? Is that something that you
Yeah,
guys
we
do as
currently do have a replacement, like a protected tree replacement list that's published on the city's website. Anybody can access that. And it's a short list. It's a page and a half, but those are kind of trees that I think Matt and I identified as being great, generally great trees for our climate and our environment. Not every tree is appropriate for your planting situation. So if you have questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. But it's a good starting place. That said, there's also a very extensive list that was included in the plan. And so we will be reconciling those two lists once this plan gets adopted to make sure that, we're promoting the same trees. And I think we have a little bit more work to do on that list.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you. On the budget issue that Lisa was talking about, and you said that staffing was included, it doesn't include any potential new staffing, does it? Because it sounded as though that's kind of nebulous.
Yeah, so I was just looking into the actual budget model that we use, and it does include some staffing in it. I'll have to probably get back to you guys about how much of it is from, say, like a new staff member, because I think mostly it's probably about the existing staff, probably about approximately the same amount of staff that there is now. And so, yeah, that would be a consideration to take into account of providing some more funding for potentially a fully dedicated urban forestry.
Yeah, I thought the budget numbers were an average of the last 6 years or so.
That's right.
Right, but the projected, in terms of the
yeah.
projected cost, is that what you were asking about, the projected cost, or just, yeah. Yeah.
And I know Kevin touched on this a little bit, but the big change in costs is partially inflation, right? And then the other part is just things get more expensive in California as time goes on. But we have identified ways to limit the amount of additional costs that we're gonna incur with the management plan, and that's what's talked about in the master plan, and that is why we want to put our money where it gives us the most bang for the buck, like giving the community opportunity to plant trees that we provide to them, instead of the city tearing up a section of concrete to plant a tree in front of somebody's house that might not even want a tree. So we're trying to balance all our options and figure out what's the most efficient way.
There's a few things to consider, just to dovetail onto what Matt was saying with tree planting. It's really, really expensive for the city to plant a tree. It doesn't seem like it should be, but the tree cost is not very high. The labor cost, might take somebody, I don't know, Giacomo, an hour to plant a tree. Not very high. You dig a hole, you plant a tree. It's the maintenance cost, the establishment. What we like to do. You have to prune that tree when it's young to make sure that it's going to have good structure over its lifetime. When it gets older, you have to prune the tree. You might have to remove the tree. So all of those costs kind of get compounded, and it's much, much cheaper for an individual homeowner to plant a tree that contributes to the urban forest than for the city to plant a tree that contributes to the urban forest. We don't have a program. We're not tracking how many people are planting new trees. You can drive through entire neighborhoods that don't have a lot of trees. You can drive through neighborhoods that do have a lot of trees. The neighborhoods that are really, sort of like these beautiful Pleasanton neighborhoods that we think of, the Birdlands and, Black Avenue, and they're sort of these tree-lined streets that are maintained by the Parks Division. Well, we'd like private residents to take more of an initiative and more of an active role in growing the urban forest and providing sort of the same benefits that we enjoy in those neighborhoods, and even more so because right now you have a lot of really big, beautiful trees that have just outgrown these 4-foot planting strips or these 3-foot planting strips. But somebody that lives right next to that strip has a beautiful, large front yard that's just grass, and they could have a nice big tree there. A lot of times people aren't thinking that way. They don't know what type of tree they should plant. They don't know how to plant a tree. They don't know what it takes to get the tree established. They're worried about the long-term care of the tree. So a lot of that is just outreach and education and helping people sort of get excited about planting trees and improving their own neighborhoods. And so what I see, because I look at all the private tree requests that come through the city, what I see is sort of this this trend. When somebody removes a tree, their neighbor wants to remove their tree, and then their neighbor wants to remove their tree. And so I'd like to reverse that trend. So instead of removing trees, and that being sort of the thing that everybody is doing in the neighborhood, they're all planting trees. And I have seen that in, limited, areas of Pleasanton, but there is no concerted effort. There is no messaging happening. And so that is going to be one of the big efforts that come out of this plan.
I just wanted to comment. I think that some of us in Pleasanton have a love-hate thing going with trees because we realize that they provide shade in the summer when it's really hot. We realize that they're beautiful. But if you have a tree that is encroaching on your foundation and bringing up your sidewalk, I mean, a lot of the trees on my street have been taken out because of that very reason. So if your list of 10 native species trees also have shallow roots that aren't going to be spreading, 70 feet, that probably would be the best way to go because even over, I know at Smoke Tree Commons, they've got 70 redwood trees that were planted 60 years ago, and they're massive. And we have to deep water them. Every year we baby them, we get them trimmed, and they are
They
bringing
look
up the patios,
beautiful.
and we're going to lose our insurance over it. So that is what people, and I have taken out a large tree on my property, and then I've planted another tree. But you have to have the right tree to plant.
Yeah,
That's critical.
I think there's a theme in the urban forest master plan of the right tree in the right place. And
Yeah.
I know it's repeated
Yeah.
dozens of times.
You don't
So
want to
that's
put a redwood tree 4 feet from your door.
Right. And there's trees that we would no longer plant in the parkway strip in front of someone's home anymore for similar reasons. So things have evolved a lot. There's a lot more, trees that were the in tree, 40, 50, 60 years ago are now fallen out of favor. It's a
Right.
little bit like the bell bottoms in the back of your closet. You're not going to get those out anymore, right? So we're not going to plant those trees either. So
Yeah.
it's all about the right tree in the right place. I'd rather have someone plant a small tree than no tree, right? So anything would be better than not replacing the tree that might have been removed.
Right.
And I should add to Commissioner Hall that the idea of the plan is not to make people plant big, trees that are encroaching on their foundations, like you said. We do have the tree preservation ordinance. We do have a permitting program that allows people to remove big trees that are causing damage to their property. And so the idea of this plan is more about the long-term, 25-year vision for, with all of the challenges that we have with trees. You can go down any street in Pleasanton and you can see the encroachment happening on tree roots. You can have, as many neighbors that love the tree as that hate the tree. It's about figuring out how are we going to not lose all of these trees that are now, some are heritage trees, most are protected trees at this point. And how are we going to not lose those trees, but sort of mitigate for fire, for, damage to our hardscape and our house foundations and all of those things. So trees kind of tend to be the last thing that we think about when we're, developing and building. We want to flip that and we want to think about them first. So I think it's a good point you raise. It's something that most residents are concerned about, and and we understand that you shouldn't have a big tree that's causing damage to your property. You shouldn't have to live with that.
Well, they start out at small trees. People move. is what
But people don't
happens.
know. I met 3 people today in the pouring rain who told me on 3 different occasions that, well, I loved the tree, 15 years ago. If I knew it was going to be a protected tree now, I would never have planted it.
Right.
And I thought it was going to stay small. Why didn't they know that? Because they're not arborists. They're not tree people, which is why there needs to be some level of education about the right tree to plant.
So what happens, this goes to the council, whatever recommendations, and it's going to get streamlined and incorporate everybody's comments. How does that play out with the current budget?
Yeah.
Is it going to fly anyway? Just wondering.
I mean, so the urban forest master plan is going to be adopted, and it really is a roadmap to achieve the things that we're hoping to achieve, which in part is going to be an efficient management of our urban forest. So this is what we're going to be using to figure out, hey, how could we best utilize the staff that we have, whether we're cutting staff, keeping the same staff, or adding staff. It's about working with the community, reaching out to them, utilizing the resources we have to manage our forest. That's
So the
basically
plan will be
it.
adopted, but
There's no
don't know what the
requirement.
funding will be that's going to be associated with it. Is that?
Yeah, so this master plan is 100% funded by urban forestry funds, which is not our general fund. That is the topic of discussion currently across the city. A lot of the funding for the urban forest master plan implementation is going to come from the urban forestry fund, which are the developer impact fees. But we don't have a set amount of it's going to be this many dollars at this time. This is more of like, hey, this is the goal, and we got to figure out how we get there as time goes on, and we realize how many resources we have to use.
Okay.
And it will ultimately be up to, the residents of what they want to see. How much, what do they value, and what is, where are the priorities, and the council, obviously. So you can't apply for grant funding. You can't do any public outreach. You can't plant new trees. You can't do any of these things that we're talking about doing that are outlined in the plan without having the plan. First, you have the plan, and then you decide, do we want, do we have the funding for this plan? Or if we don't, what are the things in the plan that we want to focus on? A lot of things are free. A lot of things don't cost any money. It's just, sort of reframing how we're approaching our urban forest.
Thank you.
I will say at some point, staff's capacity to plant trees and care for them and get them established maxes out. So we're pretty much there now in our street tree and median tree planting. I think we average around 100 trees per year. We water trees for multiple years after they're planted, but without adding more people or taking people from park maintenance to care for trees, we're going to max out at some point. The plan should hopefully have those recommendations where we could say, should the economy change or should the priorities change, we would have that roadmap. Yeah.
Right. Good.
Any more questions, Commissioner Hall?
I'm finished.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank-
It was a great
Commissioner Sierra?
report, by the way. It was a good read, I thought.
Yeah, so I had a question kind of about the about the canopy visual, the 25.3% coverage in the zoning. It's something about the fire department, and there was an overlap with the low percent of coverage and the risk for like fires and other environmental concerns. So I was kind of wondering, like, what areas were you guys looking at for like minimizing coverage versus the like other residential areas where you're looking to increase that for the city, if that makes sense.
Do you want?
Yeah, I can start it off. I think there's not too many areas where we would want to, I think, minimize the tree canopy in the urban most urbanized areas of Pleasanton. It's mostly on the transition, right, from the kind of upland areas into kind of the urban boundary that we would just be wanting to, I assume the city would be wanting to focus their fuel load reduction efforts, right, so that there's a buffer that can be created between, that wildland urban interface.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as addressing fire, it's all about hitting the ridge on the south side of town, and it's not. I mean, we're talking about trees right now, but a lot of that fuel management is about managing what's below the tree, so we don't get those ladder fuel fires where the fire crawls up into the tree. But as far as like reducing any canopy, it's in the neighborhood. That's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to just focus on making sure it's equitable around the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, even in the areas kind of west of Foothill, there are something, a vegetation management model called a shaded fuel break, where you would still have the trees, but like Matt said, you remove the fuels underneath the trees that could then spread into the trees. So just because there's vegetation management doesn't mean that the trees are going to go away, or there might be more spaced out.
Okay, so thank you. With that, we move on to the next item. We are not making any motion, right? Thanks a
I
lot
just
for
want to
this.
make one comment real quick. The report is amazing, and thank you for your work.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks, Matt and the team
Ditto.
for wonderful work.
That's good.
So we are moving to the next agenda item, where we will be reviewing the staff will present the presentation about the playground renovation options, and as a commissioners, we need to provide the recommendation for which playground should be prioritized for the renovation. So Matt, back to you.
Okay, so you just get me tonight. That's why I had to supplement my information with some other people. And thank you, Kevin and Sarah. No, good go. So now you just got Giacomo and I, and we're going to concentrate on the next agenda item, which is the 2025 playground renovations. And we're taking a little bit of a different approach this time. And a lot of you are new commissioners and you haven't gone through our typical playground approach. But given the city's current financial situation, we spun this a little bit. So we're focusing on picking a playground location before we pick an actual playground design. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So every year we go in, and I say we, but really I'm saying Giacomo and his team. I just try and take credit for it. Go in and evaluate all the playgrounds, and we have 46 parks in our system, and we have about an equal amount of playgrounds because some parks have 0 and some parks have up to 3. So a little bit more than 46. I think it's like 50 low. Evaluate our playground locations, and we came up with 4 playgrounds that we really think we need to focus on this year. Del Prado Park, which was this playground was installed in 2004, and I want to apologize. There was an error in my staff report for the age of the Nielsen and Del Prado Park playgrounds. Del Prado's 2004 and Nielsen is also 2004. And then the Moeller Park playground is installed in 2006. Like I just said, Nielsen was in 2004 and Ken Mercer was installed in 2006. And what we're really looking at, because we have $550,000 in total to spend on the playground renovations, is that we could do a large playground and a small playground. And so we would essentially be looking at a menu of playground options, three basic options. The first one is to include Del Prado, which is staff's recommendation is to renovate Del Prado and the Moeller playground. And the reason for that is because we have missing items in the Moeller playground. You could see in this slide, we got a couple areas that are just blocked off with plywood. The plastic has been pretty well damaged by the UV light and needs to be replaced. And so we're looking to replace the Del Prado playground. And then the Moeller playground, if you look at it from afar in the picture, you say, oh, that doesn't look so bad. But then as you could see with some of these close-up pictures, this is kind of the biggest problem that we have as far as, I'd say, like code compliance, where we actually, I think we took some Bondo and we we use a Bondo to repair the playground, and that's never really a good sign. So with the playground renovations, we're looking at from a few different viewpoints, which is number one, is it degraded? Is it safe? Number two, is it safe? Can we get replacement parts? Is it still code compliant? Those sorts of things. And so this is why we're recommending Del Prado and Moeller, because we think these are the most dilapidated playgrounds, or most concerning for us as staff. There is also the Nielsen playground, which is pretty much the same age and very close to Del Prado, but we think Del Prado's in a slightly worse shape than Nielsen. So that's the other option. It would be Del Prado and Moeller, or Nielsen and Moeller. But we didn't want to neglect this last option here too, because I think it warrants a discussion. It's not staff's recommendation, but it gets to a different goal for the city, which this playground, Ken Mercer Phase 1, we replaced the other two playgrounds in Ken Mercer Park about 3 years ago. And we left this one off the table during that time because we had proposed the All Abilities playground in that area. Now, with this playground, still needs to be renovated. It's in the best shape of the four we analyzed. It's actually pretty well protected by trees and whatnot, and it's not as well used as the other playgrounds. I think partly because there's two other playgrounds in that park, and there's playgrounds at Valley Trails and Tennyson Community Park. So there's a lot of playground options in this area, but there is $280,000 left in the All Abilities Playground Fund. So there would be an opportunity to utilize the $550,000 that we have for this annual playground renovation, combine it with that $280,000 for $830,000, and build what we could in this area for that amount. To address the All Abilities needs, which we don't have an All Abilities playground. We don't have servicing that's really easily accessible by people with mobility issues. So that's why this is on the table. But the main reason why we're not recommending this one is really because where the city is at with our funding. Which this playground we would be enlarging it, and although we would be replacing some equipment, so that would maybe remove some small amount of maintenance requirements, we would be adding way more maintenance requirements, and that's not necessarily what we're looking to do in this time, but at the same time, this does meet a community need that is not currently met. And so that's why option 3 is on the table. And this would just be the Ken Mercer playground and wouldn't include renovation of the other playgrounds. So kind of talking about the next steps, we're going to be moving forward pretty quickly, and I'm looking to the Parks and Recreation Commission tonight for recommendation on what to do, whether it's Del Prado and Moeller, Nielsen and Moeller, or move forward with Ken Mercer Phase 1 renovation. And then basically next week, in a week or two, we're going to be advertising the RFQ for the playground replacement. It's typically about a month-long advertisement. Then in April, we would be choosing a playground manufacturer, and like April-May time period, we'd be doing the community outreach for that playground. So we would basically advertise the RFQ, we'd get designs back, we'd choose a consultant, and instead of like we usually do coming back to the Parks and Rec Commission at that time, we would just ask the Parks and Rec Commission to come to those community events to provide your feedback at the events, because we are pressed for time because we need to encumber this money before June 30th when the new fiscal or when this fiscal year ends. And so that's why we have this kind of relatively quick schedule. So yeah, we'd be in May, we'd be getting that input, finalizing the design and finalizing the contract and taking it to council for approval in June, whatever that direction is that we end up going. And so with that, I just want to open it up for comments and questions. And I don't know, Giacomo, if you had anything else you want to add before we hand it over to the commission.
I'll just add that both Nielsen and Del Prado have had some of the playground features removed. It may not be that noticeable, but for instance, there used to be 2 large slides at Del Prado. One was removed and replaced with just a panel, a guardrail. I think at least one slide was also removed from Nielsen and not replaced. It wasn't so much in those instances the availability of the part or the lead time, but just the great expense for the replacement parts. So similar to an older vehicle, at some point it just doesn't make sense to put a large sum of money, $10,000 into a playground that is at the end of its usable lifespan. So we don't want to keep putting new parts on an old chassis or an old structure. We would, and that's really what happens to these playgrounds, is that the plastic eventually becomes brittle and cracks in the slides. Once the slide cracks, usually it cracks at the bottom, they're not repairable. There's no magic plastic welding or glue that'll keep them together. We've tried that. I tried that.
Bond only goes so far.
Bond only goes so far. But so, in terms of the compliance, most of these playgrounds were obviously in compliance when they were installed in 2006. There's been upgrades to the ASTM regulations or the National Recreation NRPC. I don't know. The other, there's 2 playground codes that you have to adhere to, and that has to do with head entrapment and entanglements and protrusions and other things like that, or how far things are spaced apart. Without doing another audit, it's hard to say if these are still in compliance or not with the current standards.
Thank you, Matt and Giacomo, for the wonderful presentation. So we'll go to any questions, or how do? We pass the motion and take the questions, or?
No, do questions first.
Okay. So Commissioner Mike, any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. Commissioner Chuck?
No questions that weren't answered in the report, though. I'll have, as far as comments, I'll have comments, though.
Commissioner Lisa?
I just actually had a question on the Del Prado Park, is this what kind of slide is that? Maybe I just never been to this park, but I'm like, is it a?
So that's actually a concrete slide. So it's kind of built into the hillside. So you kind of walk up the hill and then you come down, and typically what the kids do is they bring cardboard with them. And it's not a very tall slide, but it's enough to have you bring your own cardboard to the park and slide down it. So I don't envision that changing, because that's a massive concrete structure and it's kind of historic to that park. But the actual, green and blue and yellow play structure would be more of what would be in play.
And the swings, is that all rust on the top there?
That's either rust or missing paint.
Okay.
So in theory, according to the current playground safety standards, even missing paint is out of compliance, because that missing paint then opens up that metal for corrosion and other issues. Obviously, that standards throughout the United States. So if you're in the Rust Belt or whatever, your winters are much harsher, or the Pacific Northwest than ours.
And I should add that a lot of these playgrounds are on their second round. So if you look at Del Prado, the first improvement when the park went in included that concrete slide and other equipment that's already been replaced. Same with the Nielsen. There were already improvements included that have been removed and replaced. And so this is
The
yeah.
third generation,
Yep.
I guess this could be of playground at some of these parks. Yeah.
Okay. And is there budget, whether big or small, each budget cycle that's set aside for renovations for playgrounds?
That has historically been the case.
Okay, that's fair. No, that's fair.
And I don't know what we're going to do moving forward, but we don't necessarily have an annual replacement budget. We do call this our annual playground renovation CIP project, but a lot of times we'll actually skip 2 years and then we'll do multiple playgrounds, or we'll skip even 3 years and then we'll do 6 at a time or something like that. So we get some benefit by quantity, combining them into a larger quantity, so we could get a better bid price from the contractor. So for instance, Del Prado and Nielsen were last renovated as part of a total of 6 playgrounds that were renovated at the same time.
Okay, so we don't know. So if we're like, Ken Mercer Park, that's the way we want to go. Those four other parks might not get updated with budget because we don't know if that'll be there. And this is just, it could be years because just by the scheduling.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
Okay.
we used to target playground replacements every 15 years, and now we're kind of running in the 18 to 20 range. I mean, we're still in pretty good shape, but we have a lot of playgrounds that are very similar to age to the ones that we're looking at today.
Okay, thank you.
I also think there was a time when our R&R, which is our repair and renovation budget in parks, was being funded fairly regularly, and we had money that was building up in that, and we could use that money for these playground replacements as well. It would be transferred out of the parks R&R fund into a CIP fund to go out and do the work. Well, our R&R fund in parks was very low, into the hundreds of thousands, $200,000 range, I think. Now they're starting to build it up, but that might stop. Last year might have been the last kind of infusion into that, so that's hard to say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hall.
I don't have any questions. I have a comment for later.
Okay, Commissioner Siena.
Oh, no questions.
Yeah, you go ahead. I have a few questions, so
Yeah.
you go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. Just to play on the repair component. So if we look at the chipping of paint, that would have been something in the budget. I'm assuming that there would be staff or somebody coming, kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge, not take it down to steel, of course, but just to keep that from being exposed.
That is an option. Like if we were to retain these playgrounds and we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance, painting metal is, you kind of know what the right products to use are. But
Right.
that is something that we could entertain is put more maintenance time into these.
Yeah.
The playgrounds are inspected every week. So that's over 2,800 inspections for the Parks Division per year. But it just hasn't hit our Vintage Hills. We did retain the play structure, the swings, and just had them painted. So that could be an option to, I think at both parks, at Nielsen and Del Prado, to save a few dollars. Yeah.
Okay.
And retain those.
It's not as big of a saving as we thought it was going to be when we said Vintage Hills. We're like, this is a no-brainer. Let's just paint it.
Yeah.
And then we moved in that direction, and we got a quote from the painter, and then we had our quote from the playground manufacturer to remove and replace, and we're like, oh, it's a few $100s difference.
Yeah.
But I still think it was the right move because the steel, there's nothing wrong with the steel.
Right.
So I have a question, Giacomo. What I saw as the next steps, I didn't see is there a need for City Council to ratify our recommendation before you go for bidding our contract? No.
No. So typically what we do is we go out. We already have council's approval by the 2-year CIP process to advertise the RFQ for the money available. So really tonight, we're going to get your recommendation and we're just going to go straight into to advertising the RFQ, and then council will be the one that ends up approving that contract.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we pass the motion,
And then we want to make a motion.
make a motion.
One more clarification on that. So is there any design component or designs already, I'm confused by that piece.
Yeah.
Something talked about?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the beginning, usually we come to you with a design and we say, hey, here's this design option or this option, and we show those two designs to the community and they provide input, and then we make a final revision before we finalize the contract and we present it to city council. We will still do that, but we don't have any designs right now. We're basically coming to the commission one step earlier, and we're saying, hey, we're looking to see what the commission thinks about as far as the best use of the funds available in the place it's most needed. We're making a recommendation to you based of our analysis, but we're looking for you to confirm that, and then we will be moving forward with advertising that RFQ, getting those designs, and then those designs will be coming back and you'll be able to see them and you'll be able to comment on them, but it's not necessary that we will be presenting them to the commission again for input because of the time. It's possible, and you might see it as part of just a update that we do to the commission, but it just depends on the schedule because there's so much lead time in front of the commission meetings and the council meetings that we would be really pressed to do it. So we'd be asking for you to come to those community meetings essentially.
Okay, thank you.
But in terms of when we select, the vendor's going to do the actual design as part of the package, right? We don't have to go out to a separate company for the design. The vendor does the design as part of their presentation.
Yeah, we basically advertise and we have them use the footprint, and we give them idea like, hey, you know what, we don't want the playground equipment that we already have elsewhere in the city. So, they come up with the design, and then we get the great opportunity to look at all the different designs that all these people created, and we say, oh yeah, you're the most creative and we're picking your design,
It's a very contentious process because maintenance and design don't always match, right? Yeah.
Okay, we make a motion.
We make a motion first and then we discuss it.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. I'd like to preface it though with my reasons for the motion. It was right around the pandemic, I guess, or not long after we had the listening parties for the All Abilities Park. We had a lot of attention at those I think 2 meetings, if not mistaken. We got people excited about it. We have neighboring cities who have All Abilities Park that our families today have to go to those cities to have their kids who have ability issues to have structures they can play on, which I think is truly unfortunate that we are the one few cities in this bay that still doesn't have a single park that has true all abilities structures. So that was what many of you have heard my feelings about this. I've been very disappointed since that I know funding became the main issue. Chuck, could you tuck into your microphone? I know funding became the primary issue once we finished that process in terms of understanding that this wasn't going to happen right away. But I heard still from the families that was hoping still there was a way that we could either pull back to have some part of this made possible. And I think this is our opportunity. I know we have Del Prado and Moeller and the other two that really are in need, but I think this is a great opportunity for us to take that 230,000 or 200, how am I reading glasses on, 280, using that money plus the money for those that we have for this phase of the playgrounds that needs to be replaced, putting that together to finally make that a reality and bring some of that phase one to the all abilities to Kim Mercer Sports Park. And make that at least bring that to those people that have been looking for something that they can make work for their kids. So So
I would like to make a comment as well.
Please.
On that same point, I want to really go back to what our former Mayor Brown mentioned while we were doing the All Abilities Park debate. And she brought up the point of why don't we start incorporating these in our local neighborhood parks? And I really want to emphasize that as opposed to one location, Ken Mercer, that this is the opportunity to actually go to those local parks and incorporate those all-ability components in the local parks so that people in those neighborhoods can go. That would mean 2 parks that we would have that in this cycle. And then going forward, that we would always look at, that has to be our Pleasanton One mandate of equity. We have to look at all abilities in every single renovation of every park. That has to be what we do going forward. If we're going to play equity, we have to do that. And then that answers the question where that money gets allocated to. It goes into each of the parks going forward. That's where I would go with that instead of the Ken Mercer Park.
there just isn't the money for that right now, or probably in a year going forward as far as the revenues to put all buildings in several parks.
I'm saying it's not every park is not going to be an all abilities park. It'll have components of all ability built into each park. So there'll be a piece of that park that allows access for everybody. Is the way that I would, and I feel very strongly about that.
Do we
I
have a
think-
motion? Like, what do we do? Like, we're
I
debating, but
let me go forward with my. Well, I was going to go forward. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we go forward with option 3 and have phase 1 of the all abilities put in using the 280,000 that was remaining for that all abilities park that never went through, along with the money that we have for the current playground replacement.
Mike, you want to?
I can't back that.
No, I mean to say you want to amend and propose. Go with your proposal.
Alternative proposal would be to.
we need a
have-
second first.
I'm sorry?
We need a second on his motion.
I'm not-
And you don't want to second it?
No, I'm not seconding
Okay,
that.
does anybody else want to, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
I said, does anybody else want a second?
Okay. With that, you want to pass a
Right.
motion?
As an alternative, I would like to propose having all ability components built into every renovation of every park in our town going forward so that we live equity for everybody.
And we are and with the option 1.
Option 1 in this situation and have that all abilities component in that.
Oh, could I make a comment? Or is that
Please.
the right-
You can second if you'd like to second.
Well, I
but-
second that. Yeah, I think it's a really noble cause, and I think I've seen how accessibility impacts a lot of people's lives, and I think that that's really something worth fighting for.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is that the budget for 550 is it possible to have the all oh my gosh,
All ability.
thank you, all abilities. I was thinking all in there as well, or are we going to blow the budget with that? So and maybe we only get to one park, but I'm just more curious.
So
Could it be all, or could you just put an element of it?
That's what I'm saying.
In, yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
yeah, so one point I would like to make is that all playgrounds that we put in and every one we've done for the last 10 years that I've been here, they do have components to the design that can be used by everyone. The bigger challenge for us, and where I think we kind of are a little bit short, is the surfacing to get to that playground, because the fiber, and Giacomo, if I'm misspeaking, you tell me, but the fiber is the challenging thing. It's definitely 100% the best product for the city as far as giving us the greatest bang for our buck, and it has very low maintenance requirements because all you have to do is refill it and refill it. But the rubber surfacing or like a synthetic turf or some other acceptable playground surfacing is kind of what you need for people with like access issues or mobility issues. And so what we would potentially do, because we don't really have that except in I think one of our playgrounds, right? Rubber surfacing.
Yeah, Amador Valley Community Park has the rubberized surfacing.
But we would maybe provide some rubber surfacing or synthetic turf up to certain parts of, you know, like this is what I'm hearing, and how I might address that is to provide access to the playground from that point and focus on that certain area so they have access to the playground. But then the challenge is once they go up and then they come down the slide or some other area, we're going to have to figure out how to make it all work, because the rubberized surfacing is very expensive, and it is also has a large maintenance requirement, and it needs to be replaced like within like 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, so let me back up a little bit on the fiber surfacing, which is, you can call it engineered wood fiber, or it's great at impact attenuation. So when someone falls from a certain height, it absorbs that and it reduces the potential for injury. Rubberized surfacing would do the same thing. The best thing about the playground fiber that we have currently is that, you, like Matt said, you just add more, and it's fairly inexpensive. I have seen playgrounds where they do have kind of a guided approach with rubberized surfacing, so there's very little rolling resistance to that, and that would lead to some of these components, and then maybe lead to some of the rest of the playground. Now, would that person be able to maybe navigate 360 around the playground? That might be a little bit more challenging, but some is better than none, you could say. Rubberized surfacing does have a lifespan where it begins to break apart. I've seen it's kind of got like a top coat and an under squishy part, and sometimes that top coat will come off. So that's just something to think about the lifespan of that. But if it wasn't a huge amount, then obviously that cost would be a little bit more bearable should we have to do repairs or replace it. It is flammable, but a lot of the playground is flammable too. So I don't think that's really an issue to think about.
But to get to your answering your question finally in a super roundabout way, do we have enough money? Every time we go out to construction, we have a 10% construction contingency. So I say 550, but we're looking at a construction budget of $500,000. The last time we replaced the playground, which was Val Vista, was about $360,000, and that was for both a 5 to 12-year-old player and a 2 to 5 player, and it was a big playground. Moeller is very small, probably in the range closer to 100, 125,000 to do that, assuming we're not adding additional costs, which now we probably will be with some more access. But my point is, we probably have some flexibility in the budget to accommodate this recommendation.
I mean, they will kind of build it to the budget, so some of the other components may not be quite as exciting, but you could build in some all abilities components as well. So I think that's kind of what they end up doing is okay, you're going to have these features over here, but over here it's going to be a little bit more of a traditional playground feel, or maybe not quite as action-packed, or maybe that it's spread out a little bit more.
So as a teacher of elementary students that are in that demographic, I can tell you honestly, and I work with students that have severe limitations in their ability, is that they're there, and that's why I feel very passionate about this, is that they want to be there. And if it's even one part of the structure they can engage in, it makes a world of difference for these children and the parents and the families. And that's, I just had the vision of, with our town, and I want to make sure that people feel included throughout the town. that, and some people have difficulty getting to Mercer. And you were talking about, on a daily basis, families take their children to parks. I have a grandson that lives near Tawny Park, and that's something my daughter goes to probably every day, when he's not at daycare.
So one thing I might ask for clarification on is we're looking at, as part of this motion, renovating both Del Prado, which has 2 to 5 and 5 to 12, and Moeller, which is, I think it's a 2 to 5, right, Giacomo?
It's kind of up in the air. I would probably call it a 2 to 5, but it has some 5 to 12 elements to it.
But there's a very limited ability to make a lot of improvements at Moeller, because is it in a turf area, or actually, or is it?
It's surrounded by grass. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's surrounded by grass. So my question to you really is more about, is the commission's recommendation to more focus on Del Prado because it has much more flexibility to provide a place for people of all abilities, or equally distribute between Moeller and the Del Prado, or some other recommendation?
I think the proposal was to try to incorporate in all new renovations that each park would have a component of that.
So that would probably mean that at Moeller we would need to provide an access to the playground, which is an additional cost. So that's where we got to strike that balance of where are you getting the most bang for your buck.
I think there is. If I'm looking at the image on the right, at least on my screen, it looks like there might be a concrete pathway to the playground itself.
Yeah, it's just there to the left, as you can see on the west side.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been to that park quite a few times.
But
there's a pathway right there. You can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like you have to walk through the grass to get to it. So that's
already
good.
there.
So I'd like to amend the motion to say to add all abilities components to staff's discretion, so they can. But we would like all ability components.
So the amendment is because that creates a big hole. But I hear what you're saying, that it to the best of ability as opposed to shall.
Exactly, because
I think that's fair.
And so we can't just do option one like that was the motion. We should add in this all abilities component to your discretion. You've heard what we've asked for, and we trust you to.
I think if I can put it on the record on YouTube, that right, that
do we have a second on my amendment though?
At the heart is that we
Yes,
would try
a second.
everything we can to get there. I'm not a politician, and a politician would say it's going to be this way. So
Did we get the second?
It's in the best possibility to do that would be the hope.
Okay, Commissioner
Thank you.
Hall.
I didn't have any.
Any comments? Yeah.
No, I really like the idea of fixing Del Prado and Moeller though, because those damages look really bad. And I don't think children should be playing on them. So, and I'm all up for the all abilities component being added into new renovations and construction. I think that's a great idea.
I would just think also these manufacturers are going to start really going in that direction as well. I like the change at Mercer in the back. I live right around the corner, and at first it looked a little bit odd. It's the kind of spaceship thing, and it really, really, really works well. It's really amazing. So at first glance it looked odd, but it's really, really a great change there. And I think that really helps because there's a low aspect to it, and kids can climb up higher, but kids that don't have the ability to go up or younger kids can play on that lower level. So big thumbs up on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sienna?
Any comments? No. No, thank you.
Chuck, you want to have any comment? Okay. Ania, you want to take a vote?
We need to vote on the amendment first, and then the actual proposal. So 2 votes. Because I made an amendment and we didn't vote.
Can we make one motion?
We have to vote on the amendment and then the thing, so she just needs to take 2 votes.
Commissioner Alfaro,
Oh, yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Deckard,
No.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Vickers,
Yes.
Chair Imadi.
Yes.
That was on the option to add all abilities, and so now we have to vote on the option, if we want to pick option 1.
You want to make a motion?
We already did. It's already on the table. She just needs to, unless any other comments.
No, wait, sorry, could you clarify what this,
The motion that I made is option 1, Del Prado Park and Mueller Park, with the addition of having an all abilities component at the discretion of staff. That's the motion that we're voting on.
Commissioner Alfaro,
yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Deckard,
No.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Vickers,
Yes.
and Chair Imadi.
Yes. Okay, thank you, staff, for the presentation. And as the next agenda item, we have the commission reports. And we'll start off with the BPTC. And Commissioner Hall, any comments? Any updates?
Yes, I attended the Bike Ped and Trails Committee meeting of January 27th. They elected Sharon Pekarsky as their new chair for the year and Sierra Stewart as the vice chair. And let's see what happened there. There was, they had some concerns about the budget impacts on bike and ped projects, which apparently come from a variety of funding sources. And some projects are apparently paused because there is no funding, but others are moving ahead. So that was about it. Sharon Pekarsky had attended a bike academy to learn about an implementation program for protected bike lanes. And she brought it up because she thinks Hopyard needs such lanes. And there was a discussion about opening a Zone 7 maintenance road gate at Martin Avenue and more near Stone Ridge. And that's still under review, but apparently there are some community concerns about crime. So staff was going to look into that. And that's about it.
Thank you. So, any update from the Heritage Tree Board of Appeals? Commissioner Chuck?
No report, no meeting.
Okay. And update from the PAS, Chair Commissioner Brown?
Yes, we didn't have a meeting, but I was so excited to attend the unveiling of this beautiful bench that was out in front of the library. Oh, I was very excited because I was on the committee and we talked about it and then it happened. So yay!
It was nicely attended by the public.
It was. There was a lot of people there. They had some great stuff in the library. Very, very fun. Very exciting. Yes.
Nice.
Yay.
So, update from the co-sponsored user group, Commissioner Dackett?
No meeting.
Okay. So, that's all from the commission reports. On the next item, any matters initiated by the commissioners for the future meetings? Anything anybody want to?
Oh, yes.
Request.
So I haven't been on the commission. Sorry, I haven't been on the commission for as long as some of the other commissioners here. But I know that they're making some significant progress with I think it's Lions Wayside Park, the one next to the dairy. And I was wondering if I could see like a rendering of the progress or kind of the renovations for the gazebo or anything like that, or just get like a progress check.
At the next meeting.
Yes, at the next meeting.
Is that-
we could add that as an agenda item.
We need to vote.
We need to vote on it, I think.
So you want to pass a motion,
Yeah.
make a motion?
So she's making a motion to have that at the next meeting, and I
You want
second.
to- Okay. So Anna, we want to take a vote?
Commissioner Alfaro,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Yes.
Brown, yes, thank you. Commissioner Deckard,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
Commissioner Vickers,
Yes.
and Chair Imadi.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
That was perfect because I was going to do that anyways.
Good job. Now it's official.
Okay. So we make a motion to adjourn? You want to second?
So moved.
Okay. You want to make a take a vote?
Do we?
Done.
It's done.
Heidi said we had to vote.
Yeah.
That's what she said on the thing that's in the actual manual that says you have to
Wow.
vote to adjourn. So,
No, yes.
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 You can do it two ways. You can also say, does anybody, is there any objections to